Okay, so following our introduction, which I did last time, we are going to now start dealing with our topics one by one. And our first topic today is relevance and admissibility of evidence, or admissibility and relevance of evidence. Now, after understanding what evidence is about, the types of evidence, and all that we did in the first class, we now need to understand when can court admit that type of evidence you're talking about, and when can it reject it. When is that evidence relevant, and when is it not? For example, you learned about circumstantial evidence. When can you admit circumstantial evidence? How is it treated, and when will court disregard it? You get it? That's what this class is about. So, admissibility mainly refers to the process by which courts will either accept or reject items of evidence. That's what admissibility is about. And then relevance is whether they will be relevant or not, whether they should be excluded or whether they should be included as and taken as evidence. That's what it's about. The first thing we will discuss under admissibility is Section 5 of the Evidence Act. For this class, you're going to read Section 5 up to about Section 16 of the Evidence Act. This one talks about the type of evidence that may be given. You can give any type of evidence in any suit. Either you want to prove the existence or non-existence of a fact. And it has to be a fact which is in issue. This is important because there's a difference between a fact and a fact in issue. If you look at Section 2 of the Evidence Act, a fact means anything, any state of things, any state of mind that is capable of being perceived by the senses, something you can perceive by the senses, or an element or condition of which a person is conscious. So it is something you must be able to see, to touch, to feel, to smell, something you can perceive with your senses and prove it in court. That is a fact. Then a fact in issue is defined under the Evidence Act. It means and includes any fact which either alone or in connection with other facts can prove either the existence or non-existence of something. It can also prove the nature or extent of the right of liability. It can prove disability, or anything like that. So a fact in issue is that thing. Remember, the fact is something you can perceive. Now the fact in issue is that thing which can either on itself or with connection to others be used to prove something. So for example, a fact in issue, a fact is that so and so is that John knocked Mary with his car. He was driving with his car. That's the fact. The fact in issue, was he negligent? What speed was he driving at? Did he apply the brakes at the right time? Was it a crossing point? Was it a highway? Those are the facts in issue. They will prove whether the fact is true or not. You get it? The third thing we're going to look at, like I told you in the introduction, is we have what we call a principal fact and a subsidiary or secondary fact. The principal fact is the main fact. The secondary act is the other acts which connect to the principal act. But since we are lawyers, we use the Latin phrases, and you need to learn these ones because you may find them somewhere and they confuse you. So we have what we call factum prodens. Factum prodens, or factum prodens, how you pronounce it. That is the secondary fact. And then you have factum probendum. Factum probendum. You'll see the spellings in your notes. Look at number 3. So that factum probendum is the principal fact. Like in the case of murder, death is the principal fact. In the case of an accident, the accident, two cars colliding, is the principal fact. On the other hand, factum probens or prodens refers to other facts whose evidential value may help explain the principal fact. Is that clear? So what you're getting is, like in an accident case, the factum probandum, or the principal fact, is that there was an accident on the Kampala Express highway. The factum probans are the motorcycle was riding on the wrong side of the road, the presidential motorcade was driving at this kind of speed, things like that. So you remember that there was an accident which was on the express highway recently. So you see, the real fact that the accident occurred, but these other factors now start explaining. When you start explaining, you bring evidence of it is the presidential toilet which was driving at on the wrong side. All the vehicles, all the lead cars and the other vehicles had already passed. Then this vehicle came along. So that the other facts you're trying to explain what the principal fact is. Is that clear? Next is you look at section 6 of the Evidence Act. This one deals with relevancy. How relevant is the fact? It's the relationship between two facts, whereby if there are two causes of events, one fact, either on itself or in connection with other facts, can prove or disprove another fact. So if you look at section 6 of the Evidence Act, the facts which have to be given in court as proof, they have to be relevant to the case. You cannot bring irrelevant facts. You can bring facts which are supposed to be able to prove or disprove something. We cannot be in an argument. We can't be in court arguing a presidential election, and then you're bringing facts that the president, I mean the candidate, had sex with his secretary. It's an election petition. You're supposed to be discussing whether there was an illegality, whether it was ballot stuffing, whether there was all these things. But now you're bringing facts of someone. Hey, do you know that he has a girlfriend in court? He has a girlfriend at Victoria University in second year. How is that? You see, that would not be relevant. Yeah, so that's what the Evidence Act brings. It tries to restrict what you can bring in terms of evidence. So you look at all those things from section 6 and section 7 up to section 16 of the Evidence Act. The fourth thing we are looking at is evidence may be given of facts in issue and of relevant facts. You'll see that in your notes. You can bring evidence in any suit or proceedings which proves the existence or non-existence of every fact in issue, even of such other facts which may be declared to become relevant. You can give evidence of certain facts which are there, which are in issue, or other facts which may be deemed to be relevant. Sometimes facts which explain, which show the same transaction can be tendered in as evidence to prove that something happened or not. So if it's the same transaction, for example, if it is a boat cruise accident, you can show how everything led to that accident. You can bring the accident occurred, yes, the boat capsized in the middle of the lake, but you can bring evidence to show that 2 days before the boat was used, it was leaking oil, it had a crack, everyone saw the crack, it was parked in the garage. Instead, during the parking, they didn't get a professional welder to do it. They said to use safety pins or staples to put it together, something like that. So you show how things built up to the final thing occurring. All those facts can all be admitted to show that it formed the same transaction. If it is something like a bank case, money got lost in the bank, you can show how things happened, how the person came to office very early, how he created a fake account, how he uploaded documents on the account, how he moved money from one side to another, and finally how the money was stolen or taken. So it shows the same transaction. The next thing we are looking at is the facts which are they are the cause or the effect of the fact in issue, this can also be admitted as evidence. So you are looking at admissibility, remember. So we can also admit facts which show either the cause, the effect, whether it is immediate or otherwise, of something. So for example, if you want to say that I went to the hospital and I was treated by the doctor, he did not wear a face mask, or he didn't wear gloves, and now I'm infected. So you can bring those facts to show that because he didn't wear a glove, I got a bacterial infection, and now my wound has become septic or cancerous or whatever it is. You can show that it's because of this fact that the other fact occurred. So that is admissible. It helps to, it's something which can be admitted to help to prove whether something is true or not. Also the other way around. Remember, it is both proving and disproving. You can also bring evidence to disprove. You get it? Like if you bring evidence to prove that you want to bring evidence to prove that because the doctor didn't sterilize the used an injection, injected another patient, then injected me with it, or cut me with it, something like that, operated me with it, I got HIV. So if you bring facts to show that the patient who they operated before didn't have HIV, then it means you're disproving the other fact, isn't it? Yeah. The next thing is facts which show motive, preparation, or which show certain conduct which influenced a certain fact. Those facts can be admissible. Like in murder cases, you can bring proof that so and so went and bought poison from some poisonous chemical from a government lab, from a laboratory a month ago. He went and bought another chemical from somewhere which helps to disguise that poison. Then whatever he did, and finally he put the poison in the food, or he befriended the food lady at the canteen, the one who serves the food, and you also have all this proof. So in the end, you're showing that it shows motive, it shows, or it can show preparation, how the thing was prepared. For motive, you've done your criminal law. A fact which can show why something was done can also be accepted, whether it influenced the person to do the act or not. So you might find that someone went to a person went to the workplace and poisoned everyone. So the fact which shows the motive, that maybe in the staff meeting they blamed him too much, they abused him, they were treating him like this, he was disgruntled, that one can prove the motive, why the thing occurred or not. Yeah. Then those facts are admissible. Another fact which is admissible are facts which are necessary to explain or introduce relevant facts. These are also necessary because they can explain or they introduce a new fact which can support or rebut something you're trying to prove in court. So sometimes these facts can also establish the identity of anything or a person. They can also fix the time and place, which has an effect on a fact. So all these things trying to explain a certain fact, these are admissible. To explain more, for example, if you're trying to talk about someone killing another person on a Friday night, you're saying John killed Mary on a Friday night by stabbing her 5 times. So if the defendant has some facts which introduce a new fact which cancels that thing, it can be admissible. So right now, according to relevancy, you're talking about there's John, Mary is dead, and she was stabbed. So you're looking for 3 things. Is John the one who killed? Mary was the one who killed? He stabbed. Where is the knife? He didn't kill with a gun, isn't it? So if you show that on Friday night John was in ICU in Mulago suffering from Ebola for the past 2 days. He had been admitted and was intensive care. That is a new fact. It's a new fact in issue. It has to be considered to cancel the other position. You get it? Yeah, so it either explains or introduces a relevant fact. Likewise, if it is something to do, you want to explain how something was done, you can bring, that can be admissible. For example, you may want to show that a bank manager managed to steal money from different people, and it's a case of bank fraud or fraud. So you bring facts to like you show that the money was stolen on 1st January, on 1st December. On 3rd December, he had ordered a Range Rover of 300 and something million. He had done this, he had done that. Do you get it? So you're trying to show, you're trying to introduce something to explain how something was done, or how something was done. So you can prove that. Then you show that his bank account on 1st didn't have 2 billion shillings, but after 1st it had 2 billion shillings. So definitely it can explain what you're arguing about in court, isn't it? That is admissible. Another admissible thing is things which are said or done by people who are conspiring. This can be admitted in court. So if a crime was committed by 2 people, you can bring evidence of the things they were talking about, which show that they were planning to do something. Like you may have phone conversations, you may have had an argument, or you had overheard them whispering, or their letters of intent, things like that. These can be admitted to show that there was common design to do a certain crime. I'm sure most of you were young at the time. I talked about this in the introduction, but there was a case of Dr. Kienji and Robina. If you want to read the case, you read the case of Uganda versus Kienji. In that case, they could admit evidence showing that the other person used to make phone calls to the person in Uganda who is suspected of having killed the person. So you can admit those things to show that there was some kind of conspiration, isn't it? Yeah. There's also a case, Uganda versus, I think it was Kajubi. You may not remember the case, but you can look for this case also. These people kidnapped a child, and they had to, in court, they admitted evidence showing the rich person dealing with the witch doctor and dealing with a maid. Even they brought phone things to show that they were in contact on phone. So it showed that there was some kind of conspiracy with those people to commit that crime. Yeah. Then, sometimes there are facts which may not be considered relevant at a certain time, but then they become relevant and they can be admitted by court. It may not be relevant at a certain point, but it becomes relevant later on. These ones can become admissible if they are inconsistent with the fact or relevant, the fact in issue or the relevant fact, if they are inconsistent. 2, if by themselves or in connection with other facts, they make the existence or non-existence of a certain fact highly probable or improbable. Do you get it? So they may not be relevant, but they become relevant. For example, if it's a case for rape, and a woman is saying she was raped by a certain man who was masculine and all that stuff, what is relevant is whether the man is the person who raped her and how she's trying to prove all those things. But now there are certain facts which may not be relevant at the time, but then they become relevant. For example, you may find a discussion on a WhatsApp group, or not WhatsApp group, or a WhatsApp conversation of that person, the suspect, talking to a certain person, saying he wants to do this, or something that shows that he wants to carry out a certain crime. So that can be admitted because it may not have been relevant. The conversation between this person and that person may not have been relevant, but now it becomes relevant. And so court will ask you, what's the relevance of you bringing this conversation here? Like I was doing an election case last year, and we wanted to discuss bribery. And they were questioning how did the returning officer, how are you proving that the returning officer did bribe ballot stuffing with the other candidates? You get it? And what we could admit, what we looked for, we went and got MTN records of the person talking to the returning officer during almost towards time for voting. We also got, in comparison, it also had the calls he was making to his wife and children and whatnot, and it was discovered that before election, between 1st January and 14th January, when elections were taking place, yeah, the person was making very many calls, almost very regular calls to the returning officer, more times than he even called the wife. Do you get it? So now the facts which were not relevant, like how many times he calls the wife, they now become relevant to prove that there is something really that was going on at the time. Do you get it? Yeah, and that's how it works. So in another thing which is admissible is in suits for damages. You have someone seeking damages. Facts which help the court to determine the amount of damages are relevant. They can be admitted. So you'll find that in a case you're suing for damages. For example, you're saying that because someone did this and this, you had to spend money on an ambulance to transport your patient from Kampala to Jinja, blah blah blah. So you can bring facts which show, for example, the price of fuel and the receipts which you got. It shows you the price of hiring an ambulance and things like that. So those facts will help court to determine how much the damages you can get. Yeah. So then you can also, under section 12, you can see facts which are relevant when a certain right is in question. There are certain things which you may be trying to question a certain right or custom. Like you say, for us, the Karamojong, we walk naked. And it's a normal thing in life. So when seeing naked people is nothing, something like that. It's custom or practice. Or you might say, for us in Kole, when you're taking our daughter, you're supposed to bring 30 cows or 100 cows, something like that. Or you give cows, or you give goats. So that facts which can prove that right or the custom that exists, they become relevant. So that it shows how the custom was created, whether it was modified, whether it is recognized, whether it is denied, whatever the case is. You get it? So those facts also become important. Then under section 13 of the Evidence Act, you have facts which show the existence of the state of mind or the body of a person. So these are like they're important because especially in criminal cases you have to prove intent. In negligence cases, which you're doing right now, in tort, you prove intention, like battery, assault, and all those things, defamation, false imprisonment. You show intention, or you show malice. If it's malicious prosecution, you learn those things. Then, if it's showing the bodily feeling, the state of mind, whether someone was angry, someone was happy, those facts can be also admitted, and they can be relevant and admitted in court. Then under section 14, certain facts which try to show whether something was accidental or intentional may also be admitted. So this will happen normally in criminal cases, because if it's an accident, then the issue of intent goes away. Or whether it was intentional. So there was a case where a lady knocked the husband at the gate. I'm forgetting her name. Look for the case, I'll give it to you. And they had to bring different facts to show that in court she was crying seriously, saying, I love my husband, I did not intend to kill him, I stepped on the accelerator by mistake, and all that. So she's saying it's an accident. But the prosecution brought facts to show how that, depending on what happened on the day, first of all, there was a grudge between them. They were not happy. Maybe she suspected something. Then maybe she wanted to take property, whatever it was. Then most importantly, for the accident, which she claimed, you could see that after knocking him, she dragged on for a long period of time. She drove around, moving over his body. So it's no longer an accident. That's now a matter of intention. In the case of Fagan, I think you did Fagan versus Metropolitan Police Council. Remember that case in criminal law, actus reus and mens rea? There's a case where you did where someone was driving, then I think he was in a fight with a police officer and he stepped on the police officer, which could have been an accident. But when the police officer shouted, "You're stepping on my foot, you're stepping on my foot," he continued stepping on it, actually like he didn't care. So it was no longer an accident, he was actually doing it intentionally. So those facts can be admitted. Yeah. Then lastly, facts which show an existence of a certain course of business can be admitted, whether a certain act is done in any course of business or how it should be done, that can be admitted or not. For example, if you say that in order to withdraw money from an account, this is what the process that goes on for a company, so it can be admitted to show that these are things which are done in the ordinary course of business, and vice versa. If they are not in the ordinary course of business, then you can prove that it was wrong or you disprove the fact. So I want you to look at the case of Karuma versus R. It's a 1995 case. Karuma versus R. Then you look at the case of Ramadan Ismail versus Republic. And I want you to read these two cases, and then you're going to come and submit. You submit them online. Actually, I'll put the test online, but you can submit them either in the group online or in class, and we'll discuss the cases. I don't know who you'll choose among us. Who is going to? I'm going to be giving different cases, and we shall discuss them. Yeah. So the general principles of relevance and admissibility of evidence, that's how they work under the Act. You can look at the case of Karuma versus Uganda, where police conducted a search without a search warrant. In this case, some evidence was gathered, and they were saying you cannot admit evidence which was got by police without a search warrant. And courts held that the issue is whether the evidence proved the fact. How it was got was not relevant. You read the case of Karuma versus Uganda. So like I told you when I was giving an example during the introduction, if your phone has been stolen and you suspect X, and at night when X has gone to the club dancing and whatnot, you find out sneaking into the room, you climb, break the window, go and search his whole house, and you find the phone inside his house. So when you go to court to prove that the issue is, did he steal the phone, the proof is that yes, the phone was in his house. Whether he broke into the house or not wouldn't be an issue. But I want you to note that this thing does not apply to confessions. We shall deal with confessions later, but confessions are when a person confesses that I did the thing. For a confession to be valid, it must be got legally. If you threaten someone, you get it without him confessing, knowing that he's making a confession, it has to be got legally and voluntarily. Look at the case of Gopa and others versus R. GOPA and others versus R. Yeah. So that is what you look at when I want you to look at all these sections from section 5 to section 16 of the Evidence Act. Look at the case of R versus Kurji. Kurji, Kurji. Look at it's an old case. Look at the case of R versus Kurji, where someone stabbed the deceased brother. But after a short while after, he was seen somewhere with a knife, with blood and things like that. So that could be disregarded as relevant facts. Yeah. So the case of R versus Kurji introduces a principle that we refer to as res gestae. Res gestae. RESGESTAE, res gestae. This is just a Latin to mean the statement or declaration, the thing which you're talking about, must explain the main event of the fact in issue. Res gestae just means things which which are relevant and are important to explain something. So they explain the main event. 2. The statement or declaration which you're talking about must be naturally growing out of the events, and it should not be a narration of past events. For something to be res gestae, to be important for a case, it must be something that explains the main event, and it must be naturally growing out of the events and not a mere narration of past events. So when you're talking about an accident that occurred on the bypass, you can also start talking about accidents which occurred in Gulu or which have occurred in Kenya to explain the accident in the bypass. So I want us now to look at the main aspects of res gestae. Let's look at the main aspects of res gestae. These ones, if you look at what I've discussed above, that's what it comes out. It's still section 5 to section 16. But number 1, facts forming part of the same transaction. Facts forming part of the same transaction, section 5, are res gestae. They become important and they will become relevant for purposes of explaining a fact. Yeah. On 2, the facts which are an occasion, cause or effects of a fact, those ones also become res gestae. I'm going through this again, but with cases, so that you can understand more. So you look at the case of R versus Clifford. R versus Clifford. This is a case where someone was charged with obtaining a bribe, and the prosecution adduced evidence to show that the appellant had been engaged in previous acts of bribery. So the issue was, can previous acts of bribery be evidence to prove that bribery has occurred in this case or not? Yeah. So in this case, it was held that, among others, that the evidence of previous acts of bribery, it could be admissible because it explained the state of affairs. It can explain that this is the person who normally takes bribes. It's not about character, but more that it has been happening over and over again. So it could be admissible. 3. We are on explaining res gestae or relevance of facts based on the Evidence Act. So under section 7, I told you facts which explain the motive, preparation, previous or subsequent conduct, they can also form part of res gestae. Look at section 7 of the Evidence Act. I talked about it before, isn't it? So they explain preparation and all those things. I want you to look at the case of Makindi versus R. In this case, there was a crime committed, and courts evidence of previous beatings was allowed to show the motive for revenge. It also showed ill will. It amounted to previous conduct, and it showed the causation of the commission of the offense. There had been previous beatings before, and this could be admitted as res gestae. Number 4, previous conduct. The conduct before the actual crime is committed can be res gestae. It can be admitted. It can show motive. It can show how the thing was planned. It can show. It can also show threats, declarations, intention, and things like that. So the conduct before, if you can show that Joan died on a Friday night at 10 p.m. But you can show the conduct of John who killed Joan. From morning, they had an argument. He was very angry. He was walking up and down. He went to some place, bought a gun, did this and this and this. Then all this, you're all showing the person's conduct before. It can be admitted to prove why he killed or that he killed the person. Look at the case of Lobo versus R. Please read these cases. I'm just giving them to you briefly. You read them more to understand the principle. Read the case of Lobo versus R. It was held among others that the complaints of rape and like the offenses, you needed to have the opportunity to show that the offense had been committed. Those facts were admissible. Look at the case of Lobo versus R, because in these facts show the state of mind of the person. They could show why the person did something or not. So you can find that maybe someone had an argument before, so he was raging at the time. So it was by the time when they fought, when he came back home, he was already angry. When the wife came back home, he just hit her on the head. So it was because of his state of mind. The conduct before and the state of mind could prove that he had a problem. Then, likewise, you have subsequent conduct. The conduct after a person has committed the crime can be admissible as evidence. So before the crime occurred, Victor was in class. He was on VAR. You could see him happy, smiling, talking to friends and all that. Then on Monday night, Jackie was found dead. The next morning, Victor is not in class. He's not picking his phones. He has switched off all his phones. He has gone into hiding. He's not allowing anyone to communicate with him. So, in the end, if you're suspecting Victor, the conduct before and conduct after can help to show that maybe there is something. It shows that something must have happened. Otherwise, why did he change all of a sudden? You get it? Yeah, so the subsequent conduct, the way someone behaves soon after committing the crime and the state of mind someone was in can be used to implicate him. You can find someone has killed someone, then he runs to hide in a bar. Like there's a case, well, it ended up being a case, in Gayaza, a border person was hit on the head. He had dropped someone, then he took two people. When he dropped them, they attacked him. They hit him with a hammer on the head twice, and they thought they had killed him. What saved him is that he stayed on the ground and pretended like he's dead. Didn't make a sound or what. So he lay there motionless, blood oozing from his head. He could hear the people, but he didn't know exactly what was happening. So when he heard the motorcycle had gone away, and they had run away with the motorcycle and everything, thinking he's dead, he said making groans, and people heard him. So they heard him say, they've hit me, they rushed him to the hospital and everything. So police at the time tried to look around what could have happened. And these people, what's funny is that they went to a bar, but they were a bit excited. There was the way they were behaving. So when the police came to them, who came somewhere and just announced, because the person who was hit kind of suspected who they were. And they said they normally in this place and that place. So when they saw the police, they said acting funny, running, trying to deny, coming up with stories. So the conduct after suggested that something had been done. You get it? So this kind of conduct can be admitted as res gestae or facts which are important. So I want you to look at the case of Uganda versus Twikirize. Uganda versus Twikirize. You look at the case of Uganda versus Abdul Nasur. You look at the case of Uganda versus Sali, and then you look at the case of R versus Karia. Karia is K-A-R-I-A. Look at these cases to see the conduct after. The sixth aspect of res gestae is identity. Any fact which shows the identity of anything is relevant. It's any fact which can help you identify something, it's relevant. For example, if you want to bring a fact, the girl was raped, but all she remembers is that the guy had a tattoo on his shoulder. That is a fact that can help identify the person. So if there are 3 people you're suspecting, now you're looking for the person with a tattoo. If one of the person had a tattoo, then it's one of the 3. If none of them had, then you're suspecting none of them did it, or you have to check if they removed it. If you get the 3 people and one of them has removed the tattoo from his, then you suspect that, isn't it? Look at the case of Abdul bin Wendo versus R. This one deals with Abdul bin Wendo versus R. It talks about an identification parade. In this case, facts which help identify someone, how you carry out an identification parade, those facts are important. So if someone goes to an identification parade and he can point out that so and so is the one who hit me in the night, I remember him because of his voice, his height, he had a certain genes, he had a certain mark on his he had a certain broken tooth, he had an eye which was squinted, things like that, it can be admitted. Then another aspect of res gestae is the time and place. Time and place form part of res gestae. They are important. They show that a certain crime was committed at a certain time, and these things can be admitted as evidence. They help the prosecution prove that the crime was committed at this time, therefore so and so could be placed at that time. This helps in the cases of where the defense of alibi has been raised. If you look at the case of Kamya Wavamuno versus Uganda, Kamya Wavamuno versus Uganda, it was a bank robbery, but the accused tried to bring a passport showing that on that day he was not in the country. He had the passport with a visa, in fact was out of the country. Now, when it came to court, they actually showed that the visa had been forged. So automatically that meant that he was failing on his defense of alibi. So it showed that he was trying to prove that at the time the crime was committed, he was not there. But now the proof is he was actually there. So that the time becomes relevant in terms of res gestae. Then common intention. You look at common intention under Section 9 of the Evidence Act. Facts which show communication become res gestae. Look at the case of R versus break tie. Break, B-R-A-K-E, then tie, T-Y-E. It's an old case, 1884. Facts which show that there were conspiracies of 2 or more people. They had some kind of agreement to commit an offense at the time of the agreement. This, where 2 or more people conspire to commit a crime, anything done by those parties is relevant to prove that there was a conspiracy. Then sanity. Facts which prove sanity of the person can be admitted to prove something. For example, you're doing family law 1, or you're going to do family law 1. If a will is supposed to be made by someone who is in his proper state of mind. You've heard of the case of Oscar Industries, of Kiwanuka. Have you heard the case of Kiwanuka, Jordan Sebuleba? If you've had one of those cases, anyway, you'll deal with it in family law. So in this case, the wife is saying this person made the will or has made an order declaring this to be given to me. Now, on the other hand, people are bringing proof that this person was not sane at the time. You even have proof of his madness and all that. So those facts become relevant. Yeah. Then some cases require knowledge. For example, in tort, even in contract, there are aspects of knowledge which can be relevant, like in case of misrepresentation and things like that. You've done your contract law, I'm sure. So where you want to prove that the professional car dealer knew that he was selling you a bad car, facts of his knowledge can be admitted as res gestae. So you want to prove that the car dealer sold you a bad car intentionally, or he misled you into buying a bad car. You can bring proof to show that he was skilled, he knew what he was selling, and therefore he did it either negligently or intentionally, and vice versa. I can also bring proof to show that I didn't have enough knowledge. So if you want to do business, to earn some extra money to pay for your tuition at Victoria University, and you decide to start selling phones. If you sold a phone which was an iPhone from Dubai or from China, a fake iPhone to someone, and he comes back and finds that the item was fake, evidence which shows that you had knowledge to know that phones from China may be fake or from Dubai, that kind of knowledge is the one which can be race case. Like someone can tender evidence so that this person has dealt in phones for many years, he knows them, he should have known. Or you can bring evidence so that I have just dealt with these phones for a few times, I didn't know, me, I just paid money, I wanted phones I didn't know about, I don't even know what an original iPhone is, I can't even tell what it is. Then facts which show intention, both in criminal and civil cases, can be admitted as evidence. In criminal cases, remember, you have to show mens rea, isn't it? So facts which can prove mens rea or intention are admissible. In civil cases, things which show the conduct of the person, fraudulent intent, can also show the intent. You're doing land law, you are going to do land transactions next time. So if you show that someone with the intention to defraud the other person went and forged the land title at NASA and got money from the other person and sold him bad land, but it shows he had the intention to sell property which did not belong to him. Yeah. So lastly, good faith or bad faith, malice or intention to do good, these can become relevant. In a case where malice or fraud has been alleged, the moment you allege malice or fraud, then good faith or bad faith can become relevant. Look at the case of Okefi, Okali, and others versus the Republic. So where you want to show that someone had malice when doing something, you can bring it as proof. For example, if you come and find that a child has fallen from the balcony and you're trying to prove that it is the stepmother who threw the child or didn't care for the child and things like that, you can bring proof to show that there was bad faith or malice which can be got from the stepmother's conduct. Like before, maybe she wanted the child, maybe she wanted something, so something was done with malice. If it's fraud, you have to act in good faith, utmost good faith, isn't it? So if an act was done in bad faith, like you wanted to sell land and instead of selling the land, you decided to forge a title and then give it to the other person, get the money and run away. So it shows malice and also shows bad faith in terms of what the person's heart was like at the time of doing the act. Yeah. So that summarizes admissibility and relevance of evidence. I hope by now you can get through the different situations where evidence can be, what is relevant and what can be admitted in court. Tomorrow we are going to deal with the next state, which deals with the state of the body and mind. We shall deal with similar and past occurrences. We shall deal with that generally. We shall look at those things in general. But for now, let me stop there and I'll wait for any questions, comments, or observations after that. Make sure you read the cases. Thank you.